Keep sweet no matter what. How Warren Jeffs turned heaven into a weapon. Part 2. Part 2 is where the smile becomes sinister. In the first movement of the story, the lie is still introducing itself. It comes dressed as order, prophecy, priesthood, heaven, family, sacrifice. It still has enough religious perfume on it that people can call it devotion. But by part 2, the perfume starts to wear off. The machinery is visible now. The system is no longer merely asking for belief. It is demanding bodies. It is arranging faces. It is redistributing wives. It is cutting boys loose, braiding girls tight, and calling all of it God. And right in the middle of that tightening noose comes one of the sweetest sounding and most diabolical phrases in the whole documentary. Keep it sweet, no matter what. That line is the whole architecture in miniature. Because keep it sweet does not mean be loving. It means do not register contradiction. Do not trust the signal rising in the mind. Do not let the body's revulsion become language. Do not let grief become protest. Do not let fear become clarity. Do not let violation become truth. Keep it sweet means stay pleasant while reality is being erased. That is why this part hits so hard. The evil here is not only in what is being done. It is in the demand that what is being done must never be named as evil. The girl cannot just be used. She must smile while being used. The wife cannot just be reassigned. She must treat reassignment as a blessing. The mother cannot just lose her children. She must call it God's order. The daughter cannot just be terrified. She must interpret terror as holiness. That is a much deeper level of control than force alone. Force can restrain a body, but to make the victim narrate the restraint as righteousness, that is conquest in the mind. Part 2 shows this with terrifying precision. Warren Jeffs does not merely inherit a church. He inherits an internal operating system already built on obedience, externalized salvation, and fear of exclusion. He does not invent the architecture. He weaponizes it. He takes a theology that already lives in the imagination of the people and turns it into a lever. Heaven is elsewhere. God speaks through one man. The body must obey. The family can be rearranged. Desire is dangerous. Questioning is rebellion. To leave is death. To disobey is worse than death. Once those premises are installed, the system hardly needs chains. The chains are now conceptual. That is why one woman can say with total sincerity that she would rather die than disobey the prophet. That sentence is the entire prison speaking through one human mouth. It tells the whole story. The fear is not physical death. The fear is metaphysical expulsion. Physical suffering can be endured if it purchases eternal reward. But disobedience threatens the story of the self. It threatens belonging. It threatens celestial status. It threatens meaning. It threatens the promise that all this pain is leading somewhere. So the body becomes expendable in the service of a fantasy. That is one of the darkest threads in part 2. Everything is supposedly about holiness, yet all the attention is on the body. The body's clothes, the body's hair, the body's color palette, the body's sexual access, the body's fertility, the body's placement, the body's visibility, the body's movement, the body's ownership. They ban denim, ban prints, ban red, cover wrists, cover feet.
braid every strand into submission. A religion claiming to be about heaven becomes obsessed with surface management. Why? Because the body is the billboard of obedience. Once the inside is inaccessible, control the outside until the inside follows. That is why uniformity matters so much in systems like this. It is not fashion. It is ontology. If everyone looks alike, then the self begins to disappear into role. If every woman is braided the same, dressed the same, covered the same, then personhood starts to dissolve into category. Individuality becomes suspicious. Variation becomes rebellion. Beauty is no longer expression. It is compliance. And then comes the rearranging of human beings, like pieces on a board. The documentary keeps showing these women suddenly walking behind Warren like ducks in a row, smiling because they have been married to him the night before. That image is one of the most haunting in the entire episode. Ducks in a row. Not lovers, not souls, not persons in mutual covenant.
A row, an arrangement, a procession. The smile is not evidence of joy. It is evidence of successful formatting. The same logic applies to the expelled boys. If girls are the currency of the realm, then boys become surplus inventory. Too many male bodies threaten the monopoly. So the system must purge what it cannot use and redistribute what it can. Young women become sacred commodities. Young men become disposable labor or excess population. That is not a church malfunctioning. That is a power economy revealing itself. One of the clearest lines in the whole episode comes from the outside observer who says, in essence, that the young bride is the currency, the mortar, the thing that holds the system together. Exactly. Once heaven is turned into a marketplace, bodies become the exchange medium. Brides are no longer daughters or sisters. They are units of power. The man who controls access to them controls men, families, property, obedience, and imagination all at once. That is why nothing our prophet does is wrong becomes such an essential mantra. The system cannot survive moral perception. It requires pre-forgiveness of the leader. It requires immunity in advance. Whatever revulsion arises must be overruled before it becomes judgment. Whatever contradiction appears must be swallowed before it becomes thought. If the prophet can marry his father's wives and even his own mothers in the communal sense, and the people must still call it blessed, then what has actually happened? Reality testing has been severed. And once reality testing is severed, language itself becomes a prison guard. Take the word apostate. That word does more than describe a departure. It moralizes independent perception. It takes someone who has seen something unbearable and reclassifies them as traitor, defector, enemy, spiritual contaminant. The label does the work of social execution. Now the person is not someone who escaped abuse. They are someone who betrayed God. This is how systems preserve themselves. They do not merely punish departure, they redefine it. That is why the woman who escapes still feels shame, loneliness, foreignness, stupidity, and disorientation. She has physically crossed a boundary, but the mental maps are still inside her. The outer fence is easier to climb than the inner one. She knows how to sew and play violin, but not how to interpret sitcom references or makeup or ordinary social life. That detail matters. It shows that escape is not merely geographic, it is epistemic. One leaves a total world and enters another without the tools that the first world intentionally withheld. And still, even with all that pressure, the miracle begins in the smallest place. Not with a revolution, not with a manifesto, not with a courtroom, with a thought. Maybe I could leave. That is one of the holiest moments in part 2. Not because it is loud, but because it is quiet. The mind does not yet know what freedom looks like. It cannot picture the path. It has no map, no money, no support structure, no cultural literacy. It only has a hairline fracture in the totality of the lie, a tiny interior opening, a maybe. And that maybe is stronger than all the cameras, sermons, dresses, and threats, because the whole system depends on the impossibility of that thought ever arising. The real threat to the prophet is not anger. It is not passion. It is not even disobedience in the conventional sense. It is the birth of interior permission. Maybe I could leave. Maybe what I feel matters. Maybe this isn't God. Maybe the fear is the clue. Maybe heaven is not on the other side of my own self-betrayal. That is the undoing right there. And because the system senses that possibility, it escalates. I will break you. There it is. The soft language falls away and the naked intention finally speaks. Break you. Not guide you, not shepherd you, not bless you. Break you. The phrase is almost refreshing in its honesty. It tells the truth the theology was trying to hide. The goal was never spiritual maturity. The goal was submission. The point was not holiness, but pliability. He does not want a woman with discernment. He wants a wife trained out of it. That is why keep sweet and I will break you belong together. One is velvet. The other is iron. One is the anesthetic. The other is the instrument. One tells the victim how to present the pain. The other tells you who intends to cause it. Then the documentary brings us to one of the most devastating scenes, the underage motel weddings. No certificates, no photographs, no documentation. Just a cleared-out room and a spiritual script laid over terror. This is not sacred ritual. This is laundering. The motel becomes a counterfeit temple, a place where violation is rebranded as eternal union. The girls are dragged across state lines, not because the marriage is holy, but because the law is inconvenient. That tells the whole truth. If the act were truly righteous, it would not need geographic loopholes and evidentiary disappearance. And the mother squeezing the daughter's hand there may be one of the saddest symbols in the whole project. Because both are trapped inside the same metaphysical extortion. The daughter realizes in that moment that it is not only her salvation supposedly hanging in the balance, but her mother's too. This is how domination deepens itself, by binding love to obedience. Now refusal feels like murder. Now resistance feels selfish. Now the victim consents not because she is free, but because everyone she loves has been tied to the same bomb. That is not consent. That is distributed hostage-taking. And when the girl later goes to the prophet, hoping that if he only knew what was happening in the marriage bed, he would validate her pain. And instead he tells her to submit mind, body, and soul because her husband is her pathway to heaven, the entire theology collapses into plain sight. There is no concern for truth, no concern for harm, no concern for the girl, no concern for what is holy. There is only the maintenance of the structure. Heaven has become the reward for dissociation. Marriage has become the ritual by which self-betrayal is spiritualized. That may be the most chilling thing in all of Part 2. The deepest betrayals are carried out in the language of salvation. Which brings us back to the line that lingers like poison in sugar. Keep it sweet, no matter what. No matter what the prophet does. No matter what the husband takes. No matter what the body feels. No matter what the mind knows. No matter what the child inside is screaming. No matter what. That phrase is the doctrine of emotional self-erasure. And that is why it matters so much beyond this documentary. Because the structure is not unique to the FLDS. It is simply more visible there. The same pattern appears anywhere people are told to stay pleasant while being violated, to stay loyal while being lied to call suppression virtue, to call fear faith, to call obedience love, to call the betrayal of the self God's will. Whenever the inner alarm is treated as the problem rather than the clue, the same spirit is present. Part 2 exposes that spirit with brutal clarity. It shows a world where heaven is always elsewhere, authority is always outside, the body is always under management, language is always doing police work, and salvation is always one more act of self-abandonment away. It shows how an entire population can be governed through dread of dispersing into nothing, as if non-compliance means metaphysical evaporation. It shows how the ego can make annihilation feel more believable than freedom. Better to be miserable and chosen than unknown and free. Better to be violated and saved than whole and outside the tribe. Better to keep sweet than to tell the truth. Until one day someone thinks otherwise. Maybe I could leave. That is the crack of light in this chapter. Not optimism, not sentimentality, not triumphalism. Just the first unsanctioned thought. The first betrayal of the lie. The first moment the mind stops cooperating with its own captivity. And once that thought appears, the whole empire is already in trouble. Because the real prison was never just the compound, the dresses, the motel room, the marriages, the gate, or the profit. The real prison was the story that said betrayal of the self was the price of heaven. Part 2 rips the cover off that story. And underneath it all, what remains is this. If a system has to silence intuition, regulate bodies, relabel victims, exile boys, distribute girls, threaten mothers, erase evidence, and call terror salvation, then Keep It Sweet was never a call to holiness. It was an order to help decorate the cage.